Thank you so much for the 3-month sub, Wealth Creator. Let's let's take a look quickly. Actually, can everyone's just let everyone know that I'm live. I didn't even tell anyone. I wasn't really planning on streaming today, but I probably still should go over the range. So I did draw this yesterday, and I did say that overnight, if they give us a really good close, which they did, like we hit our max ranges for the session yesterday, guys. Like look at this, like right into the close yesterday. They tagged that 26, 27 area, and then right over here that 29, 2975. We had max ranges around 331, 32. They even extended it up to 36, so this was a very good sign that they'll probably pin these ranges here. So 65.30. And in case you guys forgot why those were max ranges from yesterday's session, we can just do a very, very quick recap. So a lot of these ranges yesterday that were hitting off were essentially close to being like 44 points off session open, session close. Okay, so like that's why there was a lot of overhead here. So from Friday's close, so Friday's weekly close, this area that they stalled yesterday was right around max range. So they even extended it, which implied that we'd probably have some very good odds. And I noticed that they started hitting like you see off lows from yesterday's session in real time. I think they stalled around, like a lot of these odds were around 3-3, 3-2. I just want you guys to see it, okay? So they did a really good job of clearing that, and then look at how nicely they sustained it. Do you guys see this? Like into the overnight session yesterday, do you see this? They held 43, 44 points in ranges back here off, especially off last week's range. So kind of like this area here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Like off the weekly open, 8375. Do you see this? This was basically a 43, 44 point hold right here off the weekly open. Okay, do you see that? So I would say that that gave us pretty good odds that they could extend this. Overnight session 2 ended up, they did a good job of where they closed. They ended up not only sustaining 65, 27, 28, 29, like these were really, really, really good sustainment points last night. But they also ended up expanding in that channel like we wanted. So these were the max range areas that we talked about, and you can kind of see, like, so from where we had this for like 415, they did a good job of holding this here. Okay, that was a really, really good sign, is that they held that 2975. They broke 3.6. I don't really have too many levels marked up here, but we can definitely mark our 3.6 area. Okay, and then the idea for last night is if they give us a good close, and by good close I'm talking about 65, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, like anywhere up in there, then instead of sustaining, because my conditions for yesterday were that we'd have to sustain 65, 16, 18, 20. That was more so if they closed around here. Does that make sense? Like 65, 22, 23, 24. If they had closed closer to here, then we definitely want to try sustaining above 65, 26, 24, 27. So your conditions just slightly increased by like 5.5 points. Does that make sense? I need you guys to make sure you understand the conditions, because we set those conditions before the close. So if they had closed it closer to 65, 22, 65, 26 areas, sustaining 65, 16, 65, 18 is fine, okay? Closing closer to 65, 29, 65, 33, you'd want to sustain 65, 26, 65, 28. Does that make sense? Like you probably want to sustain a little bit higher than that range. So they did hold off this. And they held off exactly. I don't know if you guys saw this, like off our calculated ranges from yesterday. Do you see this? Off 2650, 27, and then right off that 2975. Those were also calculated ranges yesterday, guys, off the real-time open. Don't forget. So these were the 22-point ranges off the opening range. Do you see it? These areas here. Off that 07, 0725. So that's where those numbers came in from. These areas here off opening range were the 33 points, okay? So I did notice that off 07, they did stall right here, like 30, 30 and a half. So the overnight overhead would have been closer to like 40, 41. Do you see this? 41.50. So overnight, I was thinking that they'll probably stall a little bit around these spots here. 40, 41. Do you see how they consolidated nicely? Until they start pushing up. What was our weekly overhead? Which area? And this is where you'd really have to start paying attention. So, and this was the first area that I figured that they could break to. That's why I had that arrow like that there yesterday. What's the overhead for the week, you guys? And if you meet this overhead prior to prints, you have a pretty good odds of breaking it. What's that overhead? Yeah, 4245, exactly. It's on the report. If you missed that, go back and read it. No, all those answers are, the only answer that's right is 4245. And I highlighted that on the report probably 3 times. This is the right answer, okay? So that's our big weekly overhead. And they were able to meet those conditions overnight. Do you see this? So back test of 2.9 right here. This is the 22-point hold right here off open, and the 34-point hold off lows. Okay, so like this area right here, just in case you're unaware of like what this spot is, and especially off like or the 44-point range right here. Okay. So were our odds pretty high then that they would test 65? So what's our annual range then? What's the big overhead for annual range? This is the wall before range. What's our actual annual range? What area is our annual range? And all of this is in the report. And we've been talking about this for literally weeks now, so probably months actually. So you should definitely know what they are. Yeah, 5.7, 6.6, right? Those are the ranges in the means, basically between like 5.5, 5.7, 5.6, 6.5. These are the spots I calculated yesterday. So I just put them on the chart because we had very good odds of stalling there into prints. Okay, so if we tested 4.2, 4.5 overnight, 4.7, did we have pretty good odds of testing 6.4, 5.7, 6.5 into prints here this morning? What do you guys think? Pay attention to this stick here. And there's something else that really stands out, but I don't know if you guys noticed it. I'm not sure if you guys noticed it or didn't notice it. Oh, nice, guys. I have a... Can you guys report this, please? There's a fraud on Substack pretending to be me. How do they even reach Substack now? Like, that's crazy. Just gonna pull up the report. Thank you. I don't know. Maybe you can get a discount from their fraud. Okay, so let's take a look. So So we already knew last week that that was last week's overhead, and we stalled 4-1, so this was pretty spot on. Heading into this week, let's just take a look. This is this week's report, right? Pretty sure it is. Yeah, this area here, and I even highlighted it for you guys. Okay, so this is definitely overhead. 4.2, 4.4, 7.5, 4.8. Okay, that was kind of like the first range that they could maybe stall, and I even kind of drew this out for you guys. Mostly relative if they break 2.2, 3.2. I even had these marked on the chart before the 10th, like on the 9th, so on and so forth, because we were stuck in the zone. So the idea was that they take us back to the zone, and that's like the 3-bar scenario. This area has a lot of confluence, so don't forget why this area is huge, because it is. This is a really, really big spot, like around this area here. So if they're already meeting that, that's going to give us the best odds of hitting our annual ranges. We had very high odds of staying stuck in the zone Monday, Tuesday, which they did. Yesterday was a perfect zone day, you guys, by the way. What do you guys notice about yesterday's zone day? So that's the zone. What were our ranges from yesterday's session? 6.5, 8.9 to 6.5, 3.6. So what do you guys notice about that? 6.4, sorry, not 6.5. 6.4, 8.9, 6.5, 3.6. They obviously sustained the bottom of the zone, and they even expanded into the channel. Okay, that's one thing that really stands out. Something else stands out there. What else stands out? And we also really didn't want to go back and test beneath the zone, because like testing beneath 6.488 this week, could we really afford that risk like we could have last week? What do you guys think? Probably not. Like this is the most ideal area that we wanted to kind of hold off this week. We didn't really want to come back and break down. So what stands out with this range, you guys? You have to answer that question. What do you guys notice? Okay, and it's right in the report. So if you can get to this mid-channel, you have really good odds of triggering that 65, 55, 65, 60s. If you read last week's report, the ranges are right in there. It's 6.5. Let me actually pull up last week's report. Hold on. Where's last week's report? This isn't even my page. This is the scammer's page. Where's my page? Hello September, I think this is it. Here we go. Okay. You should know these. Okay, if you don't know these, you should probably go back and study. So our big area is this area here, right? And if they clear 6.532 and break that channel, then you have very good odds of tagging that 65, 66. Okay, this is what's going to give us the best odds of getting to 6,600 by as early as probably September. Technically, they could do it by tomorrow, but I don't think they will. They could do it by September 16th, 17th. That's kind of like the range, okay? So you should know that these were the areas. If you don't know that, then you're not reading properly. You're not studying the reports properly. You're not really understanding the ranges properly. Do you get what I'm saying? So what do you guys notice about yesterday's range in the zone? What stands out to you guys? Because this should help you understand how today's price action is trading. And look, they stalled right at 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 7.5, 6.5, 6.5, 2.5. So like 6.6 overhead right here. Okay. What do you guys notice here? Two things really stand out. And it's a very, very, very common theme. And if you notice it, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it's been the theme since the beginning of the week. Let's see how smart you guys are. What do you guys notice? What's been the offset for this week? And a common theme. We talked about it yesterday. What's been the theme? Yeah. But what's the offset? No. 32-point offset's way too high. The answer's on the screen, guys. We talked about it a lot yesterday. It's us opening 5.5 points beneath the zone area, or beneath the close area, or beneath. Okay, so like roughly 5.5 to 9 points. So something that I noticed that really stood out is, okay, like, so the differential between, like, was 8,375 really the best open for us this week for constructive price action? So, and continuation, that's the key word. No. Okay, so it could still get us to where we need to as long as they actually sustain. Did they do a good job sustaining this week? Did they do a good job of sustaining this week? Yes, they did, especially on September 8th and 9th, okay, which is very important before release on the 10th. Where did we have to sustain this week? Where did we have to sustain this week? Where did we have to sustain this week, you guys? I've got open positions down here, so answering questions quickly is appreciated, obviously. But what would be an even better area to sustain, considering we open beneath the zone? So LI, you have to understand conditions though. Like this would be more ideal if we opened above 6488. Does that make sense? You can afford a little bit more risk, but you opening a little bit lower, you probably want to sustain a little bit higher. Do you get what I'm saying? Because your open didn't give you an advantage. So you probably want to sustain around 6487, 6488, 6489, 6490. High dunks. Okay, where is the top of the zone here? 65, 32, 33, right? Which also ended up being, like we were saying before, like that 44 points in range, right? Like off these areas here. Or like the 22 points in range off this area here. 17 points in range off the highs here, right? So we had a lot of confluence around the 3-2, 3-3. We already kind of talked about that a little bit. Off the weekly open and let's say this range in here. Okay, or even off of this opening range right here and this area in here. Okay, it's pretty obvious. So like, let's say like the 22 points in range. Okay. What's something that stands out here? So if, and it's so obvious, but you guys just have to see it. What's something that really stands out here? Especially if we had a lot of confluence around 3-2, 3-3, 2-9, 7-5, whatever these ranges were up here, 2-9-50. What do you guys notice that happened yesterday? What did they do here? This is yesterday's session. What did they do off these ranges, guys, yesterday? Yeah, they basically offset that 5.5 point ratio. Do you see it? and then right into like beginning of the session. Do you see that? Off the zone. Okay. So can this help limit risk a little bit? You think? The fact that they did that into yesterday's close? I would say so, right? Because now it's giving us some better odds, especially after like this kind of range break. And they actually continue this today. If you guys were paying attention to what they did today, it's so obvious. Okay, so our big overhead was where? Around like 4.4, 4.5, this area here, correct? This area here, maybe like close to 4.2. I think 4.5 was the bigger spot that we said this week. What do you guys notice about the 830 stick? What do you guys notice here? So they open the 830 stick, 65.41. The low range hit 3.8. Okay. Ideally, you want it to be above 4.2, right? Opening closer to 4.4, 4.5 would have been a little bit better. Does that make sense? You guys? Did they reduce the range a little bit in this area here? I need you guys to see this. If you guys can't start recognizing these patterns and offsets on your own, then without me having to tell you, then it's kind of an issue. Okay, so even back in here, so like on a 34-point basis off lows, let's say, which I think was like close to here. Okay. What do you guys notice right here from like where they sustained overnight range? Do you see the common patterns here? You have to see them. If you don't see them, you're not understanding price action. Do you guys see the common patterns here? Yeah, and that's going to give us those 38, 39 point ranges that we said is probably going to be a very common theme this week. Okay, do you see it now? Do you see the theme? Even off this area here, because when we measured yesterday, we did say that there was some overhead around 5.1, I think, and 4.9. And I did notice that where they stalled here, like around 5.1, 5.2, there was some overhead. I noticed that these areas on the reductions also aligned with that, because I think what we said was off of, I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure this area was the 44-point range off of opening range. Yeah, it was. Do you see this? The 44. Do you see it? It was around 4.2, 4 or 5.1, 5.2, like this area here. And I noticed that they did stall here, right there. So do you see this? And that was a 5.5 point offset again. So I was like, okay, so I can even see the offset here. Do you see it? Look right here. Do you see that? Right here. Do you see it? Like if they broke this is a 66-point range break off where they sustained. This is closer to like 55-ish points, 57-ish points. Off of the weekly opening range, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they stalled 63 points here versus like 68, 66. Do you see that? That's the tiny offset, right? So I think if they had broken a tiny bit higher, like right before, they might have had better odds of getting a more constructive break. Does that make sense? Especially off like these ranges down here. So like this was like a 66-point offset here. Okay. This is off like the weekly ranges. This is off the lows. What was our other offset that we had? And usually when you get core-to-core ranges, it usually hits 55 to 70 something points. What were our other offsets that we have? And it does make sense. So they hit 81.5 points total from highs to lows, right? What would have been a more ideal range to hit? You think? Especially off a core area. These are 65, 29, 31. These are core ranges, right? Probably 7-1, 7-2, like with these kind of conditions. Do you get what I'm saying? Hitting like an 86, 87, 88 point range. Do you see that? If we actually had triggered 6-6, do you see this? That would have been an 88 point range off lows. That's the 5.5 point offset. 65, 71, 75 is going to be extremely calculated going forward. Mark that on your charts. That'll be like the full range break here if they actually did it off weekly open. Off yesterday's lows, it's going to be closer to 7-7. Okay. These would also be the same thing as like, remember how I said that we had like even like 9 points offsetting here? This could be something equivalent to this, right? Or you can think of it as like a 12-point break off those stalled highs around 7-7. So 7-7, 7-8 is also going to have a lot of confluence down here or up here off that range. I just really want you guys to see it. So where did they stall a little bit here? We did go long, guys, by the way, off this area. Just FYI, I took the long right in here. So what do you guys notice about this right here? So we already determined that here they sustained 5.5 points higher, but technically if this was 44 points, they technically breached a little bit beneath. Okay, so this is where like you can maybe see, like, do you see it? Could they afford some risk then in real time today off the 44 point range and the 5.5 point offset? This is why I wasn't too worried here. I need you guys to see this because it's happening in real time right now. Yes, we can technically afford to go back to 2.7. Okay, and 2.775, 2.9, and it's still fine. Obviously, sustaining a little bit higher this time would be like even better, but as long as they immediately retrace that 3.6, 3.7 wall, because this is where the offset was. Do you see it? So this time around, what do you want to have happen in this range, in this 5.5 point range? And let me just start deleting this so you guys can actually see the ranges here. What do you want to see have happen here? It is a good spot. Buy, dunks, buy. Buy and then sell if you're gonna get stopped out. Like, you have to stop trading like that. That's not trading. That's literally just watching the screen and missing a move every single day. Yeah, you probably want to break and hold above, and like look at the nice sticks that we just got right here. Is this the kind of price action you want to see around the 3.6, 3.7 area? Like this range in here, because these were calculated spots. Yes, right? Like this is definitely very constructive price action, like in this range in here. So this is a pretty solid hold. Okay, could this help us offset a little bit, especially at this time of day, like just before 3? What else do you guys notice here? What did they do this morning? So we already decided that, okay, even though they broke these ranges, obviously 5-1, 5-2 would have been a bit better because that would have given us a higher odd of like 65, 71. Okay. What else happened here? This. Do you not see this? Right? We would have rather sustained probably closer to like, not that this is bad, but like where they held right here. Like we wanted to maybe open at 4.4, 4.5, correct? But that's okay because they still sustained around 3.8. Do you see it? So like they didn't open exactly where we would have wanted here maybe, but they still sustained within that 5.5 point range. Does that make sense? Off our 4.4, 4.5. I think if they would have gone back beneath 3.6, 3.7 at this point in time, I would have been concerned, especially right ahead of Prince. Okay? Could this be the offset here that we have today? I need you guys to see this. Could this be the offset that they have here today? Based on where they actually sustained. And it's not much. It's a pretty small range box. Like, do you see it? This area right here. This is probably going to be the same sort of offset between here and here. Let's zoom in. Do you see that? It's a little buffer kind of between like, and sorry, it's actually a bit smaller than that, between here and here. That's like your 1 point, 1.5 point, which has also been a very common theme. Do you see it? Because if they would have broke down this right here, then they would have broke all the way back to 27.75, which would be the same thing as retesting overnight lows. Okay? But even if they did do that here, did they have a chance of sustaining overnight lows? Yes, they did, and probably by that same buffer, because they could afford risk down to this area here. Do you see it? Which would take you right back here. Look. I need you guys to see that. Okay, so even if they were to come back and break this low here, they probably would have sustained this low here. So does this look pretty constructive that they held here instead and are trying to break back up right here? I'd say it does, but they definitely need a lot of strength around this 3.8, this little area right here, okay? Because this is where the offset started in the first place. Does that make sense? Can you see that? Like right around here. Because ideally you probably wanted to open or sustain closer to, like I said, 4.1, 4.2, 4.4 before the prints came out. If they had done something like that, couldn't they have possibly broken 6.6? What do you guys think? If they had done something like that, did they have better odds of breaking 6.6? Yeah, they did. Do you see it? This is why this is the theme today, because that's what stalled us from getting 6.6. It's this little tiny like offset that they did right here. Okay, but the only reason why it was okay is because it was still technically within range. What would have been the most ideal stick to have happen today at this time? You probably would have wanted to, if you couldn't test 4.7, 5.1, 5.2, you probably would have wanted to sustain closer to, let's say 4.4, hold off 4.1. Okay. Like probably this range in here. Even like this whole area here. Do you see that? That's 5.5 points. Those 5.5 points would have gotten you your 7.1 break, right? Do you see it? That would have been your 88-point break. So there's a lot of confluence here. This would have been a better structural stick if they did something like this. Like even if they opened here, back tested here, and shot up to here. This would have been a lot cleaner. But did we have high odds of stalling 6.5, 6.6? Yes, we did, right? Like we already knew that this was probably going to be a big overhead. But I just want you guys to see how it could have played out a bit differently if they had broken ranges slightly, like, not better, but like just more in line with like these ranges in here. Okay? And that's why this kind of PA is happening all afternoon, because they're kind of just basically stuck in between right now. Then they came back and they sustained right off 4.2, 4.3. So back in here, did they have a decent odd of coming back and breaking? What do you guys think? Based on where they opened here. Like, pay attention to where they opened. They opened at 65.53. They opened at 65.53. Okay. Was that a good open? Pay attention. This is so important that you understand this. This was the offset that we would have preferred overnight. This is that 1 point differential. What did they do off opening range this morning at 9:30? What did they do this morning off opening range? They tried to make up the difference for them not achieving this area here, which, again, it's the same thing as like what we were talking about before. This is the 44-point break, okay? Like the 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 area, or the 66-point break off the bottom of the zone, or 68-point break off weekly open, okay? And then that tiny offset. So what did they do this morning? Give me 3 things that they did this morning at 9:30. So we actually didn't have a bad open. We actually had a pretty good open today. And a decent sustainment off 4.445, because this is where I would have rather opened this at 8:30. So 3 things they did. 1, they offset the 5.5 point range. 2, they offset that little 1 point buffer. 3, they opened 66 to 68 points above lows and above opening range. 4, they opened 44 points above yesterday's real-time range open, yesterday's session open, prior day's session close. Okay, that's what they did at 9:30 this morning. Do you see how this is directly in line with weekly session open, weekly session lows, session open, session lows? Do you see it? You have to understand that. Okay, then that gave them a better odds of sustaining 4.445 this time, but then they stalled. Okay, and there was probably some pressure just before 10:30 here in terms of breaking. As soon as we started losing the 4.1 mark right here, and then stalling right here at opening range, which was calculated. Okay, this is the 66, 68 point range from weekly lows, weekly open. Then we had very good odds of coming back. So, and then again, they did the same thing here. This is when they stalled 3.8. So you had a few pretty decent opportunities here. I would say this was probably the best one off the open off 4.4. This one here wasn't bad off the 4.1 hold. You can see like the obvious overhead at 5.2. But then they started like reducing odds in between, so you can kind of see like there's been a bit of a buffer, and I'm not really sure exactly how much of a buffer, but I'm thinking like 2.75 to 3 points, and it kind of has been a theme here. Do you see it? Like right in between this area here, like this area here, this area here. Do you see that? Between these lows, this low. This is when it started to really lose structure. And I think it makes sense because it was on the failure of 4.2, right? Like this would have been the cutoff. Like you're not even breaking back over 4.5, 4.4 here. You're probably going to test the bottom of the zone. Does that make sense, guys? 65, 27, 75 being retested here. This was a very, very, very calculated area to try triggering a real-time low today. We'll see if they hold. Losing this area is what could expand the downside. Sustaining this area is also what could save us and try giving us a retracements back to the channel, which is what we're looking for. Would this be a proper area to try doing a long trade from? What do you guys think? Yes, with a very tight stop, I would say. Okay, because this is probably the last area that I like exactly how we drew it that I'd want to see if we could sustain, because this was a very calculated spot, and especially around 3. So they definitely started reducing range back here right at 3. I did notice though something that stood out right here is before 3 they did stall at 3.875, so that is a little bit of a concern. Like you probably would have wanted to break a tiny bit higher here. But do you guys see how calculated this is? Like this hold right here, the stall right here, right? The breakdown right here, the hold right here. Like this is a very calculated session. But this is definitely the ideal area that I'd want them to hold. Otherwise, then your overnight ranges are in play, right? Like the 65.16 back test, 65.18 back test, 65.22 back test. That's not really ideal though. What's ideal for today's session? Where do we want to get back to? What would be ideal for today's session? And I'm just going to shut my screen off for a sec because what would be ideal for today's session? I also wanted to show you guys, NQ also triggered our spots, by the way, those areas I drew yesterday. Remember we said it could hit 24,036? This is what I drew yesterday. Isn't that crazy? Look, it actually hit those exact spots. So our NQ calculations have been pretty spot on. Even sustainment here. And then I think this was the neutral box. We could just keep extending this. This was the more ideal area, I think we said. This was the area that you can start playing with fire around here. So we'll see what happens. Where do they want to keep this ideally today? And it's probably pretty important that they do that, because I feel like if they don't, then that's where volatility could start triggering on the week. Where would they ideally want to keep this, you think? No, that's too low. That's too low considering they tagged 6.5, 5.7, okay? Like 20s, it would have been maybe okay if they stalled the channel, like 4.8, 4.9, but actually triggering 50s and 60s, I don't think the 20s are high enough. Like they're probably okay to maybe come back and test core ranges at like 6.8, 7.1. Like I agree with that, but what would be a better area? So I would say 20s is probably the second best. That's not the best area though. Especially with this kind of volatility triggering here. And like I was saying before, I think them stalling this could increase the odds of them breaking down this 2.6 area. Yeah, probably the channel, right? Our weekly spots, like this 4.1, 4.2, 4.4, 4, this area here. That would be the best area for this to just nest until it decides what it wants to do pre-CPI tomorrow, right? Could they easily take this back to the zone though, pre-release tomorrow? What do you guys, yeah, which they did, right? But do you understand why maybe that wouldn't be the best case considering that we triggered these ranges today? And because this is what could trigger those overnight support spots that we were talking about between like 18, 21, 24, because we still had some room off highs. I think this is also the equivalent of triggering like those 44-point ranges back to like 2.1, 2.2. Off opening range, this would be the equivalent of them triggering the 32, 33-point ranges here. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why we had some odds. If they break down 2.7, they can come back to this area here. I didn't really want to go much lower than that though. Okay. If they hold in between, closer to like 2.4, do you see how this would be like the... So let's say they hold closer to here, okay? Do you see how this would be like the 5.5 points offset? Right? So I would say holding 5.5 points above this, which is why I said 65.24 area, that could help reduce our risk. What kind of price action would we have to have happen here though? You guys don't have to see anything. It's the 5.5 points above. 6.5 or 5.5 points above. These are the 34 and 66 point moves here, or 44 point moves here. Okay, so this, or if you look at it from today's open, which was here, do you see what I'm saying? 32, 33 points, 34 points. This here, this kind of hold here is the equivalent of them holding basically the 5.5 points here. Do you see it? Do you guys see what I'm saying? What kind of price action would you need if they're going to hold 5.5, if they're going to keep that buffer here and prevent major risk of them going all the way back beneath 18 potentially? Because this is kind of the buffer area right here, around 2.4, 2.5. Yeah, you probably have to come back and try taking out this 3.8 wall, okay? But you need it like immediate follow through, which they did have. I don't like how they stalled 2.9 though, because 2950 is that mid overhead here. But do you guys see where the risk to reward is on today's session? Right around here. And then I think from like the actual session close, I think we had some risk too, based on this, a little bit lower than that. Which, I mean, obviously, we don't really want that, but there was some risk back to those neutral ranges of like 65.13, 65.08. Do you see it? Those were the 17, 22 point ranges. And then worst case scenarios, they would take it all the way back to the bottom of the zone and retest that. But I didn't really think that those odds were very high. I thought that they would probably just doji today's session, or like, but do you see the risk if they did lose this area here? Do you guys see that? Because off a session closing or opening range, that could trigger like 64.96, 64.93, okay, 64.86, 88. Basically, the bottom of the zone can get retested again. On like a mid range, you could trigger your neutral zones, like 65.07 could get triggered again, which is yesterday's opening area, right? Or you could trigger the 65.14, basically like the neutral zone. The neutral zone would be like 65.08, 65.13. So this is kind of like the mid risk. Okay, where we're trading right now is ideal risk, around 2.4, 2.5, 2.7, okay, 18. Mid risk is around 08, 13. Max risk is closer to like 8.6, 9.3, 9.6. Make sense? Them sustaining this area here is going to give us the better odds of getting back to the channel. Okay? Because this will be like a 12, 13 point break. Do you see that? Off this low here. 17 points here. 22 points here. Do you see it? It's very, very, very obvious. Whereas once you start getting closer to down here, especially off of like even off 18, you still have odds of getting 4-2, okay? But versus like 13, you have odds of stalling 3-6, 3-7, right? Do you see it? 08, you have odds of stalling 2-9, 30. These wouldn't be like the most ideal areas. Do you see that? Like if they were to take us back here. So let's do a poll. How many think that they're going to sustain this area here? Because this is a pretty big spot. Sustain 65.18 to 65.24 area. I'll put a poll for 2 minutes. You guys distracted me from my position, by the way. I got stopped out, but that's why I do not like streaming sometimes off major spots. This is a pretty clean short, though, off the 4-4 stall, 5-1 stall, even the 3-8 stall right here. I'm going to just mark this. Mostly because this was just before 3 that they stalled there. And like I was saying, I think that increases odds of volatility. And we have a lot more confluence around this area here today. I'm going to just delete some of these, though, because I know this was a big area like before, but... And you can see these reduction sticks too, like these types of stick breaks I would expect, especially in areas like this, because they're trying to increase risk down here. They're getting super close to like 32 to 33 points off open in this area here. Could we get a hold off 65.22, you think? Like maybe in between 18.19, 25.24? This would be a mid-risk between that range, okay? Usually when that happens, it's like them holding 31, 32 points versus breaking down 33, 34 or something like that. But I don't know. So far the PA hasn't been too constructive. I think for that to be the case, they would need a pretty big stick here above 2.4. Do you know what I'm saying? Like back to 2.9 or something. What's one reason they could try sustaining here? Give me one reason why versus continuing to push down to like 18, 19 area. Give me two reasons, guys. There's two very specific things that could give it an odd of sustaining here. What is it? Nope. It hasn't swept back yet. To sweep back, it needs back over 29, 29.50, 29.75. Or whatever yesterday's closing range was, which I think is here, isn't it? These are also like the calculated spots from yesterday. So forget that. Just something specific to this current window here. Yeah, it tested 2.9, tested 2.950. That's one reason. What's a second reason that they could try to sustain here? And these are very tricky areas because they're all areas that have pretty good confluence of sustaining in this range. What's the second reason? It's not that you still have time. You have time to go down. Like the time that doesn't make sense. You still have time. Time for what? It's not that you have time. It's that it's approaching a very specific time. So I really didn't like that they stalled 3.6, 3.8 just before 3. What window are we approaching, guys? Come on. If you guys are futures traders, like you should be pretty like up to date with specific points in time on the session, guys. Come on. What point in time are we approaching here? Yeah, we have imbalance prints coming up here too. So this is kind of a neutralized spot right here. right? Obviously going back to 18, 16, 19, whatever that area there would be more of like a breakdown, but okay. And the last 30 minutes, exactly, right? And we have imbalance prints. Plus this was the breakdown and failure of 3-8, which was also the 830 lows. Keep that in mind. It's a calculated spot and it's also the 830 lows, okay? That they broke down right here. Like these were the lows of 830, which also is obviously important, but this is also a calculated spot. So, and do you see how like the risk to reward here is very net neutral at this time? Like this area here, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 2, that's enough risk, but they could still take more risk, right? But it's also a spot for them where they could still hold and retrace and negate. Do you see? This is they have it right in the midpoint here, right before 330. Do you understand this? What kind of spots are these here? What kind of areas are these here? This area here, 65, 18, 22, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30. What kind of areas are these? These are extremely pinnable spots. Okay, so this point in the session is going to help us decide if they want to maybe, they could keep it stuck in this area if they wanted to, right? If they want to increase risk, they'd probably break down this area at this point in the day. If they wanted to take this back potentially to the channel, they'd have to try breaking back up over that 29, 30, 31 spot. Do you see what I'm saying? Between probably 330, 336. No. I won't. I feel like today was maybe a bit safer to hold overnight based on where they closed, because we just had very good odds of getting here, but then covering the open. But I won't be holding it to CPI tomorrow. Unless we have, like, if we got like a 4-4, 4-5 close, maybe I'll hold some contracts. Do you get what I'm saying? It depends on where they close this. If they close this in the zone, then no, I won't. Even though technically if they close in the zone, they could still trigger 7-1. It's just, it could trigger it and then sell off again. Do you get what I'm saying? So what do you guys think? What are they going to do here? Let's vote. Because this is a very important period and they have it kind of stuck right in between. So yellow range, blue, red. And this is between basically 330, 336. So if you guys can vote on that now. And I would say if they can get this back over 2.9 by like 32, 33, then I would say it has probably decent odds of getting a retest. But is 3.2, 3.1 enough to negate risk here? What do you guys think? Is that enough to negate all the risk here? No, it's not, right? What would be enough to negate some risk here into the close? Can we get more votes, guys, please? See if 3.2, 3.3 can give some retest of 2.9. You voted red. Well, this area is not bad because this, for instance, would be like a 17-point break. These areas would be like a 22-point break. So these areas align really good with like breaking over 3.9. Does that make sense? And getting back to 4.4, 4.5. So this is actually a pretty good spot to hold if they can hold it here. But let's see. We need this 3.2 to try retesting 2.9. I voted blue, if you guys care. Just because they did test 2.9 here. I feel like if they didn't, then... And that was like right before the 10-minute interval here. Like, do you see that? There we go. 65.29, 75 being retested here right at 332. See if we can get follow through sticks though. So the 3-3, sorry, and 3-4 is going to be equivalent to this 20-21. Does that make sense? These sticks here have to be important for follow through because you see how it broke down back here. So you'd probably need at least over the 3-4, 3-5 that or 3-2, 3-3 that I have marked here. Okay? Because that'll give you an odd of maybe retesting 3-8, 3-6, 3-7 during this 36, 38 window. Yeah, it would reduce risk, I think, of them breaking beneath 65-18, Fluffy. Like, I think it could still keep 65-18, 65-20 in play with just that. Does that make sense? But it would, I think, above 3-8, 3-9 plus means we're sustaining, meaning it basically means lows are in. Does that make sense? And it means that they're probably going to take it back to the 40s, which is a little bit more ideal than keeping it in the zone today. I don't really want them to keep it in the zone today because of where we tested. If we had stalled 5-2, 4-8, do you get what I'm saying? I wouldn't care if they kept it in the zone, but why would we want to stall in the zone again today if they already tested 6-6? Do you know what I'm saying? That'll really increase risk because you're just basically putting yourself backwards. So let's see what they do here. So I would say risk to 18, 19, 16, that's still on if you're beneath 3-8, 3-9. 3-6, 3-8 is only going to reduce risk of making it that this is probably max range for downside versus like 07, 08. Do you get what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily reduce risk of this being the low. That's not high enough. And the reason why that's not high enough is because like this is a 13-point break if they get back here, yeah, right? But this is still a 17-point stall. That's that 15.5 ratio that we've had a lot of this week. Have you guys been noticing that? And I pointed it out yesterday and the day before. Lots of 15.5-point ranges lately. Basically, that's the median between like 13 and 17 points. So that's why above 3-8, 3-9 would be better. Plus, it would also take us back to our 830, above our 830 lows, right? So I prefer above 3-9 to reduce risk. I want us back in the channel for the close. What else could help us reduce risk today? So we tested 6-4. What else did we do today that was really good? That could help us maybe sustain downside in the 20s. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that's really the best for odds. Because it's just going to keep this risk on for 350. 336 reducing range here a little bit. What was one thing, guys, that was really good about today's session? Aside from range. I just want to see how much range this is on this stick. That would have been 12 points. Okay. Let's see the reduction at 3637. Come on, you guys. What was positive about today's session? Aside from the ranges that we triggered and where we held overnight. Still stalling the zone here, so it's keeping that risk on. What was positive about today's session, you guys? This is one thing that could help with risk. I'm just extending these to this window here since they stalled. Because risk is still on. All 61 of you guys don't know what was positive about today's session? Really? After I spent an hour explaining that and ignoring my positions today? That's nice. No, I already said that. You guys can't keep saying the same answers. We did something else today that was positive. Yeah, we did that too. We already said that. These are giving some odds, guys. This reduction here would be a break of 38.75 if they actually were to take this back around. We'll have to see here. This range. But they really have to start moving here. What was positive about today's session? What's the first thing that happens at a session? What do you do? If they really want to hold the line here, they definitely have to start giving some big stick breaks and negating, because this reduction implied that they could break to 38.7539, but I think they really need some big stick breaks. Come on, you guys. Hello. Hello. Today's open. Did we not talk about that? Today was a good open. Why do you guys like not always remember open, close, highs, lows? You guys always remember highs and lows. You never remember the open and close. We had a very good open. 5-3 is a good open. That offset the 5.5 points. Okay, so that the opening range today could help our closing range. Does that make sense? Your opening range can also sometimes help you sustain lows. It could also help you maybe offset the 5.5 points of risk that you still have below, because they offset 5.5 points above at open. Does that make sense? Do we still have 5.5 points of risk below here? Yes, we do, right? Today's open, though, helped us offset 5.5 points above. So maybe they can sustain, right? And if they did, maybe it's implying that, I don't know, maybe they keep it 5.5 points beneath like opening range, which would keep us in the channel. Do you see what I'm saying? Like around 4.8, 4.7. That's if they can take us back. But this is a very important point in time here, because remember what I said, are these pinnable ranges? Is 65.22 to 32, 65. Are these pinnable areas? They are, but they're not ideal pinnable areas for today's session, okay? I'm looking to see if they can sustain the line here and get back to 65.32 retest by the 4.5 mark. Because if they can do this by the 4.5 mark, we have odds of breaking up here at 4.8, 4.9, 50. And I still think based on this reduction here, it was eight points, I think, total. 8 points total was 65.39.25, 65.38.75. So that's implying that they are giving some odds here. Anyone try an entry off the 2-3, 2-4 hold off this neutral spot? They did hold a little bit higher this time, so I was thinking that this 1 point could be the offset this time. Okay, meaning they could take out this 3-2 here. Do you see it? That's the first offset. Look at the stick break. That's exactly the kind of price action I want right here. And this could also be this offset here. Okay, based on this little higher hold in the 8-point range actually aligns to exactly those price points too. So the reduction that they gave here, do you guys understand what I'm saying? This reduction here, 8 points, is the same thing as here. Okay? I still think that they could get this to the channel, but we'll see. A 2-3, 2-4 hold is, and 2-2 hold is, it's still technically a good hold. They're just being bastards about this because they know that there's still 5 points that they could take it below. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're keeping this a mid risk. These are the exact kind of sticks that we need, guys, here. Because this is the earliest point that they can try retesting 3.8. If they can get this back to 3.8, 3.6 as early as like 4.5, let's say, we have really good odds to clear this area here by 3.50. I was thinking closer to 3.48 though, but we'll see. Anyone try some longs down here? My calls have actually doubled from that hold. I did get stopped out the first trade though, off the 30-2-9 hold. Well, this would be a good time to test this area here. I'd say before 350. I don't really want to wait till 350 to test 3.8. Does that make sense? Well, these are some of those trades that you can enter long, but you might get a paper cut. Like your stop has to be a little bit wider. Does that make sense? Because these are some of those moves where like they could take it a bit lower and then boom, like spike it right back, right? So you'd have to be willing to afford like at least 2 to like 3 points in risk beneath here. Like I would have set my stop 5.5 points below. Like 17 would have probably been my max. But they usually have to break like 5.5 points immediately, right? So like this right here. So let's see, what time is it? 4:06. We have to probably start setting some conditions though. What do you guys think? So let's do another poll. 65, 38, 75, 65, 39, 50 retest ahead of 350. What do you guys think? That's actually very important because if they do that ahead of 350, we actually have odds of getting back to OR. Okay? They break ahead of 350, we have odds to get back to OR. So they don't break out of 350, we have limited odds of staying stuck in the channel beneath 4.7, 4.8. Does that make sense? That can give you a whole 32, 33 points in range off these lows here. So first thing is going to be whether or not they can break 17 points here before 350. Got it? Technically, they don't owe us anything higher than like 40, 41, 44, 45, but if they wanted to push this to the 50s, they definitely could. Okay? So we'll know here in a second. I'll start extending my profit exit if they start giving us some good sticks here in the next 2 minutes. So just know that there is that kind of reward on, because they could take this back to the means based on where they opened and based on where they're holding here. Not that we need it. They don't owe us that. Like if they take this back to above 3.8, if they take this back here, I'm fine with that. This area here is fine, okay? But there is a tiny odd that they could get us maybe to here, this area here. This would be the expansion scenario, okay? This area here. You sold ahead of 350? You sold before the 3.8 retest? It's good to make profit, but I just don't understand what's your reasoning behind selling before a major retest when you still have time? Like I'm just trying to understand the logic behind it. Okay, because if they do this at 350, that's still fine, but it might limit our odds of getting like a bigger break here. Okay, this is the area that I would prefer that they get us back to into the close though, which happens to align with the 830 prints. Well, yeah, I would just think that you'd probably want to at least see if they can test 3.8, and you could even sell the 350 stick, you know. But I mean, obviously that's up to you. 653750 retest here. I think they'd have to break the 3.8 within the 30-second interval for this to get a good break. 3950 was calculated, so I would want to take out 3950, 3975. These were the 8-point ranges off this break here. So this is the spot that I'd want to see if they can close above, break above. That'll give us odds of getting back to this area here into the close. If they can close above this area here at 350, then we'd have to really watch 354, 355 to see if they'll take out the 4445 area, okay? Because if they do, then that's the way that we'll be able to pin back to OR. Remember how I said we could end up with a doji on today's session earlier? Remember I said they could doji today's session and just take us right back like here? So that odd is still there. Let's see. 65, so a little bit shy. That's that 1 point or 0.75 again. That's 0.75 shy of that. So you need follow through at 5.1. You can't stall 5.1 if you stall that area there. Anyone try the longs from down here? These are some pretty good setups. The risk reward off 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 was not bad. At least back to 3.9, 3.8. I still think that they can give us those odds of 4.2, 4.4, 4.5. I think odds of getting 55, 57 have been limited now because of not breaking ahead of 350 and then stalling, not closing above 3875 here, but they might, if they're going to keep this in the channel, then they'll have to reduce range basically. Like they'll have to maybe save the range for 354, 55. Does that make sense? You guys? What's the area that I want us to get back to? Especially off a hold like this, like a neutral hold like this. They opened around here today. Remember how I said they could stall 5.5 points beneath? Which would be the channel, like around 4.8. What's the area that I would prefer that we close in today? Nice, Bubbles. I just did SPY. I didn't do SPX. Hard to do SPX when I'm streaming sometimes. But this is a good SPX trade though. Like right here, this hold. Yeah, ideally back to 4.2, 4.4, 4.5. We actually have some odds based on where they open to get to 50, 51, 52. That's going to be relative to whether or not they can break this 4.2, 4.4 wall at 5.5, 5.4. Okay? Everyone on the same page? Is this a pinnable area for us here at 3.8, 3.9? $354, $355, very important period to break the basically 4-1 wall. Okay. How much time do we have left? Oh, on NQ, we basically want to get back. So that was a really good hold here on NQ of this neutral zone. We want to get back to that the same spots of yesterday. Remember how we said 23.89, 23.893. They actually pinned exactly there yesterday too, guys. I don't know if you guys saw that on NQ. Look at where they pinned yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw this. Look, yesterday's pin. Look, they pinned right at our spots. Do you see that? Our target. That's crazy. So this area is equivalent on NQ. So I guess for NQ, they'd have to break the 23.889 area that we talked about yesterday. And then maybe try getting back above 23893, I guess. So it's kind of funny that we're back, like on NQ you're beneath your closing range, but on ES you're not, because ES's closing range was closer to 3.1 and 30. So, and this is a really big point here. So 65 40.25 stall here at 5.4. 5.5 really has to be the stick that tries taking out that 40.75 wall. Okay, so let's set some alerts. Let's set this to 6541.50. Let's set NQ to 893. Or even 8. 8. Because those are the big spots. 40.75 being tested here at 55. See if there's a follow-through stick here. How much time is left on this candle? Did they tab for 1? There it is. 65.41 tapped the last 5 seconds on that stick. That's exactly the spot that we wanted to see at 55. Do you see that? Look, final seconds. 4-1 tap. This is going to help us get to that 4-4, 4-5 with tiny odds of maybe getting a push at 4. We'll see. Okay, this is the box we wanted to be in into the close though. Everyone should be making like money in this area here. You can take some off here if you want. I think that them breaking over 4-1 here is good, but these are definitely pinnable areas. Market doesn't really owe us too much more above this box range here. So this is about half the risk reward, around 4.3, 4.4. So obviously it's up to you. Let me change my exits here. Hold on. Okay, I think that triggered. Did that trigger? What did that trigger, you guys? NQ? Yeah, this is getting close. And that's off that 4-1 break. 23.888, 23.889. This is going to give us that 9.3 break on NQ. And to the close here, that would give us the 4. We need a 4.4, 4.450 break then at 5.8 here. I figured the max range, if they don't break ahead of 350, is probably close to 4.7, 4.8, but we'll see. They have a tiny odd to keep this going after the bell. NQ getting a little bit better range breaks. I did cover some here, guys, though. I covered half. Hey? I covered half here. Just FYI. I'll leave the other half for the close. This is a really good SPX trade too if anyone took it. Did you guys take this trade? Off the 2428? What are we at for time? 30s wasn't bad too. I feel like it was super obvious when they broke back 5.5 points here, like off 28, 29, this stick. Like even if you didn't get an entry here around 2456, I got an entry close to 26. But even if you got an entry in here, this was still good risk to reward. So let's see. I figure that they could probably give max 4748 for 359, but it seemed likely that they would do like close to 44, 45. I think I was on the money for that. I should have done a max risk to reward scenario. So since they took this back to the channel, guys, overnight trade is going to be that they just keep this probably nesting in the channel and then try getting back to the means, even if they just digest the means a little bit. But staying channel bound is probably not going to be the worst case. Usually you can digest in the channel for a long period of time, hence this morning staying stuck here for 2-3 hours, right? So we wanted to close a minimum of 65.38, 75, 65.39, 50, ideally close to like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. How much time do we have left here? Even a 4.1 close wouldn't be bad. I just don't want them to take it back beneath 3.8 into the close. So let's see. 20 seconds to go. They could probably back test this area here. Let's see where do you guys think they're going to close it quickly? 10 seconds. I feel like they'll pin, I feel like they could pin like 4.1 maybe if they can hold this 3.75. Or like maybe close to like 3.9. Where did they close here? 3.925. That seems pretty calculated with them stalling 4.4. I feel like if they had taken out 4.4 here, then they had some odds of getting there. So right to like the mid risk. So they basically stalled exactly where I covered half that position. Not bad. This is exactly where we wanted to be into the close. There still is going to be some risk. So obviously overnight, I'd say we want to try sustaining the channel this time. 65.31, 32, 33 would be ideal over 3.4. And then just keep this channel bound tonight, okay? So if they can nest this in the channel in this beige box here and then try getting back to retest 5.1, 5.3, 5.5, 5.6, and then maybe we have some odds of getting core areas tomorrow. So 65.71 is going to be a huge overhead. 65.77. Those are probably going to be my max ranges for the week, because there is some odds that they could keep this a little bit back and forth over the next 2 days. We do have CPI prints though, so I mean obviously depending on how much range they give us. So if they give us a full extension tomorrow, let's say, right? Like, so even 33 points here should give us 7.172. Do you see that? If they give us a full like 44 point break, there is some odds they can get us to the 65, 80, 45. But basically it's core areas. I feel like core areas have some odds. 65.10, 66.10, sorry, 66.01. These were some, we did have some tiny odds of 6K this week, guys, like 6,600. That would be exactly 34 points off the 65, 65 highs, okay? So technically we did say in the report that September 11th was the earliest that we could trigger 6,600. But I do think it's going to depend a lot on what kind of price action they do overnight. Do you guys agree? So I would say for that to even be a probability for CPI prints tomorrow, they likely have to break 6.6 overnight. Does that make sense? Like 6.671 probably has to get tested. Like I feel like they can't for like 6,600, 6.10 breaks. That was our next targets above core areas. But for now, 65.71, 65. 77, 65, 82, 65, 85 is the area we can look for on upside if 6566 is broken with good relative strength. Okay. If they decide that they want 6566 to be the max for the week, which they definitely could, do you guys agree? I think them even stalling 66, they could even do something where like they, let's say, take out 665, but then stall 7-1. That could be like a 6-8, 6-9, 6-7 break tomorrow. It's like a slight break, and then some volatility post CPI. Does that make sense? Where they take it back to the means, and then maybe the channel ends up becoming the core area to hold, and then they just channel us. So that would be the worst case scenario, but that is technically a probability. Okay, so if they did something like that, it would look like basically them breaking this area here. Okay. If they did something like that, it would be like them holding this area here. Okay. Keeping this nicely in the channel overnight. Getting a break overnight of 6-4, right? Maybe coming back down, nesting here. Let's say CPI prints, comes back, and then they break this area. That would be like a stall, okay? Like where like they break just above 6-6, but they keep it beneath like 7-1. Does that make sense? If they did something like that, that is what could keep us channel bound and could take us back to those 20s again. So these are very recyclable ranges for the next 2 days. Does that make sense, guys? If they really want to limit range. Okay, so that would be a limitation of range for CPI if they did something like that. If they, let's say, took out 6-6 and then pushed to above 7-1, 7-2, like let's say they actually took us like above here into like the opening ranges, then that's when we'd look at like sustaining the means. We don't want to go back to the channel. We probably want to stay above 4-4, 4-8 at that point. Does that make sense? Especially if they hold overnight. Ideally, we want to hold this 4-4 area overnight. So like holding 3-8, 4-4 overnight will give us best odds of 7-1, 7-7, okay? And not returning back to the channel, even though we can afford some risk back to 3-3, 3-4, 3-5, okay? But that'll give us the better odds. And this kind of odd is what could allow us to potentially enter the zone as early as this week, okay? The earliest odd of entering the zone was September 11th. We did have higher odds. So entering the zone, guys, is above 65, 88, 89, 90. We did have higher odds for the 16th and 17th for next week, but technically they could do this as early as tomorrow. And that's also going to be a 34-point break here from highs, or you can also look at it as like if they end up closing around here. Do you see how these are, the 7-4, 7-5 are also 34 points here from closing ranges? Okay, this is probably a 44-point range. Yeah, it is, like 8-5. So I think if they close today's session closer to like, where are we trading right now, guys? 3-8. If they close the actual session, maybe closer to, let's say 4-3, they have odds of getting into the zone. So that could be why they might have stalled 4-3 here. Do you guys see that? Like why they could have maybe stalled this area? Do you see it? Because 4-3 is technically a break to 65, 87, 50, or like 65, 88. So that would give us an odd of getting into the zone. So that could, they might not want to enter the zone this week. And we also had very low odds of entering the zone this week anyway. So we had better odds of like 65, 66 being tested with slight odds of getting some core ranges. So core ranges would be this area here, beneath 8-8 but above 6-6. Have we technically hit enough range this week to be considered a max range for the week? This is why 65, 44, 45, guys, is better too, by the way. It's aligned with getting into the zone, just as an FYI, so that you guys are aware of that. Yeah, this is definitely enough for us to be considered max range, right? These areas are also more aligned with upper core ranges around 7-8 versus like 7-1. So Anything above 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 is definitely a little bit better. If they close us closer to like 3.5, 3.6, do you see how they could be a little bit limited? Like to like 6.9, 6.8, 7.1? If they sustained around here, we're limited to like 5.7. That's where the... So this hold right here is linked to 5.7. And it's also linked... I just want to show you guys to 6.6. Do you see that? This low right here is linked to 6.6. That's why I'm saying even if they take out highs, there's a tiny chance that they could actually barely break 6.6, meet our weekly conditions, and maybe stall like 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, like somewhere like in this range. Because it also aligns with 44 and some 34-point ranges here off lows and off close. So off lows, 5.7 is going to be an overhead, and 6.6. Off close, if they close us around here, that's closer to like 7.2, 7.3, but would still limit us being beneath the zone, like around 8.2, 8.3. Does that make sense? Like these areas here. That's why I was thinking that above 4.4, 4.5 would give us probably the better odds, if anything. So we'll see where they close this. I still think either way, anything above 3.8 is still going to be a good close for us today. But I'm not holding anything overnight. I was going to hold if they closed maybe at like 4.4, 4.5, but a 3.8 close, that's not bad, but that could limit us to 6.6, 6.8. So I don't know. That's not, it's not bad. It's not great. Yesterday's close was a lot better. Yesterday gave us really good odds of getting this area here. So, okay, any questions, guys? If not, then I'm just gonna sign off, and hopefully we get better PA tomorrow. I did do the stream late today because I didn't really see a need to in the channel this afternoon. It was pretty back and forth for a bit. I wanted to jump on when we started triggering closer to like the 2.9, 2.7, 2.4 area. I think it was a really good call that they held 65.22 to 65.24. That was a very hard call to make, by the way, for me in real time, because I knew that they could easily take down another 5 points, but based on where they opened, they could also sustain 5.5 points. So if they did, the logic would be to hold 2.2, 2.4. That's just so that you guys understand why I felt like there's a chance they could hold this neutral spot right here. With the conditions, they'd have to retrace 2.9 and that 3.1 area. No. I'll only hop on early if there's a need to. If there's no need to hop on early, then no. You also have to remember too that this affects my positions, right? Like I actually got stopped out at a loss on this first trade because I wasn't paying attention. So no thank you unless you plan on paying for that. Luckily I got the re-entry here. So study this session up. Hopefully that makes more sense now why I prefer to get back in the channel versus staying in core areas. So core areas, they're not bad if they would have kept us around 2.2, 2.4, 2.6, 2.8, but I do think that would have been better for yesterday. You can also think of this, them stalling 2.44 is also a 22-point stall off lows. So they still broke 17 points, but they're still stalling these kind of ratios here, which has been a pretty common theme. But if they would have pinned us around there, do you see how that could limit us to 5.7, like in the means? That could actually increase risk. Did you re-enter though? See, like this area here could limit, like if they would have pinned us here, we're kind of limited to 5.7, 5.6. So I got stopped out on that initial entry too because I initially entered down here. It wasn't too bad though. It was like a 2.5 point stop, I think. But I also knew that the range beneath 2.7 was 18 to 24, so like if they broke that 2.7. Plus when we were reviewing this, we said that 2.7 had higher odds, right? Holding 2.9 would have been the area that would have probably gotten us back to like OR, if that makes sense. So that's why I thought that this could be a decent area to try, because you could easily get back to like the 50s here. But when we were doing this review, it was the 2.7 area had a lot of confluence, and then when they broke it down immediately. So that's how I knew that they would probably trigger closer to these ranges. But it's fine. This whole area is an entry area. It's kind of just relative to like this whole 17-point range, or even like I would say probably between, I would say 3.1 to 18, this area here, the 13-point range. This is a good area for entries. Okay, so the best areas were, I would say, probably around the 2.7, this area here. Okay, because the risk wasn't as high, and then your stops are not too bad. But this area had a little bit of risk because there was basically you're gonna have like at least 2 to 3 points in. Does that make sense? Like 3.5 points here, let's say 3.5 points here. Like you should have been able to like understand that there's like a 3.75 to 4-point risk from these areas. Does that make sense? So like the midpoint is probably the better area versus this area here. Like when I did my second entry right here, I put a stop at the 17 mark, which was pretty steep. But my area back in here when I entered, this was like the better area. You could just set your stop closer to like 2.7. Does that make sense? Because they had, and they also had odds of holding 2.7, but they broke it on that first stick. So I would say between 2.5 to 2.8 is probably the better areas of entry, like in this little box range right here. But they're all still pretty decent. It was within like a 12, as long as they stayed within a 12, 13-point range, basically. And then that's when you can start exiting this like on a 12, 13-point break. Does that make sense? So for me, mine was closer to like here. Okay, so like 3.7, 3.8. Whereas if you had entries closer to 2.7, do you see how you'd have like some better exits around maybe like 40, 41, right? Max risk reward, I would say, is close to this 30, 31. Do you see it? You probably wouldn't get more than 13 points. Do you guys understand this concept? This is pretty important to try understanding, because this is the range that they were working with. Because our risk to reward box was 13 points. You didn't want to go beneath 18, but you had to try getting back over like 3.1. So you had about 13 points of risk below, 13 points of reward above. Max risk or max reward was off 3.1 to 4.3. Okay? Do you see it? Whereas if you had some entries closer to here, you probably will hit closer to like a 22-point ratio right here. That's where 4.4 would have given you better odds. Okay. Or closer to this range here, like the 2.7 area, you're probably limited to 17 points. Do you see that off 2.7? So the 2.7 area was more calculated. Does that make sense? So like the area around 2.7, you have better odds of working with the 17, 22-point intervals in terms of where they'll stall. And that makes total sense, because that's exactly where they stalled. And this is the 13-point range is probably aligned with that 3.975 break. Do you see it? So 2.7 was a little bit more calculated. I entered right in this range in here, so it's kind of like a nice median point right here. Just so you guys know what the risk to reward was on those trades. But we'd never had that much risk below based on them sustaining the second time. If they had broken down before 345, let's say, like, I just want you guys to see what the risk was, so, because that's important too. So you see this? I never had a chance to explain this because it was when I was entering my position. Do you see this? This was almost 12, 13 points here, okay? This overall range. If they broke this down, do you see how they had odds of taking it back to that neutral box here? Do you guys see that? Like back to 65.11, 65.10, right? And the full range, which was like 17 points. Do you see how they could have taken it back beneath yesterday's OR, 65.05? Okay, 65.07. And all of this was, I think we said the, like especially off the 10 spot, another way of looking at this was these were the 44-point ranges beneath open, like the 43, 44. Do you see that? So the range that they broke up by was required for them to not have like mass risk below, because they definitely had odds of continuing this down to like 11, 10. Do you see what I'm saying? Or even if you looked at like a 33, 34 point range. Like at a minimum. You had odds of getting back to like 19, 17, 18. Okay, and that would have probably been in line with like those 38, 39 point intervals that we've been talking about. This would have also been the same thing as like a 44-point hold off highs. Okay, this is 44 points holding off highs, so 44-point hold off highs is implying that they want to try sustaining the lows around here. So even if they broke this down, there's maybe even an odd that they would have held like 2-1-19. Holding here though gives you odds of getting 6-6. Does that help you guys understand entries and exits? Like, so even if you got shaken out in here, you should have been able to get a re-entry in here with a stop of like maybe 3 points below. Kind of like an area that you'd have to understand your risk to reward. So I think this gives you this is good to review RR off these ranges. I might have also entered a tiny bit early at like the 2.9 and 30 spot, since I knew that 2.7 had more confluence, and I probably could have waited for the 2.7 back test first. So maybe that was one thing that I could have personally improved today, is maybe waiting for the 2.7 back test. But was there an odd that they could also hold 2.9 and avoid hitting 2.7 entirely, you guys? Was there an odd that they could do that? Yeah, there was, especially when we were in the middle of reviewing that as it was happening real time, right? So they had some odds of holding this 2.9 area and forming a higher base. So that's why I did that long right here. But then they stalled 3.8, so you could have easily covered half. Another way that you could have traded this too is if you tried the 2.9 versus waiting for 2.7 to backtest, is you could have covered half there and then maybe averaged down, like re-added back your position, if that makes sense. Right? Especially since, you know, these areas had a little bit more confluence, but I think the 3.875 test is what gave us the odd of holding 2.4, like I was saying before. But yeah, that's one way you could have traded that. So I took the long here, I covered some up there, and then I just got stopped out when it broke that 2.7 mark, but re-entered around the 2.6 area. Okay, But they're still all really good spots of risk reward. I didn't really think that, like holding 2124 19 was good. We just didn't really want to have that risk of going back to 08. I do think it's important too that you understand why they traded it like this, like why they held 2-4, right? Because this area is also aligned with 6522, 6524 is aligned with 6557. That's 34 points, and 6566. Okay, so that's another reason why it made total sense that they would probably hold it there. Okay. Okay, I will catch you guys tomorrow. We'll see if I do a full stream tomorrow. Kind of depends on the prints, but we'll see what they do overnight. I'll catch you guys in the morning regardless though. Oh, also, do you guys want a report today or tomorrow? I know it's like CPI is usually on like Tuesdays or Wednesdays. We don't always have CPIs on a Thursday, so it's kind of a weird day to have our CPI prints. So it's up to you guys. Do you want it before CPI or post CPI release for an end of week wrap up for like Friday or something? I'm good with either or, so just let me know and I can do it either today or tomorrow. Doesn't really make a difference for me. A lot of what we talked about will just be like recapped in that anyway for like the 7-1, 7-7, whatever. But if you guys want it in printed format before tomorrow, then I'm fine with that too. Post? Okay. I think if we had just base conditions pre, which you guys should already know what they are, then like you guys should already know that 7178 is going to be an overhead. Plus, you already know that we have to hold the channel tonight. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we already met all of our weekly conditions so far. So, and you already know that the 10th, 11th have the highest odds of testing those annual ranges. So it's pretty obvious that 65, 66 has to be broken. Do you know what I mean? Maybe we can do 2 parts. Maybe just very, very brief notes today, like before, and then we can do the part 2 tomorrow or something. Does that work? Like just some mock scenarios and conditions, and then we could do the follow through to see what happens for Friday to close off the week. Let's do 2 parts. Only because it's on a Thursday. It's just kind of a weird timing. Okay, so we'll do a part 1 and part 2 for pre and post. The pre is going to be exactly what we just talked about on the stream, though. It's going to be exactly what we just looked at. Like, nothing's... It's going to be exactly this. Like, I could just put these in there, you know, but with some actual context behind it, you know? But I don't think any of that would change. Like, do you guys want these like scenarios, conditions? We'll just set them with like some conditions. Two-part series. All right, I'll catch